My name is Roberto, and I've been a truck driver for the better part of my life. I'm 43 years old now, and I must say, this job is very special to me. I hold it dear as it has been the livelihood for my family and me for many years. I also like it because I have had some very good colleagues, and with some we have even become very close friends. However, it does have a darker side, as it's no secret that it has become very dangerous for truck drivers on the roads of Mexico. And not just that, many of my friends and I have experienced very strange occurrences that cannot be sensibly or logically explained. This story is about exactly that, something that happened to me a while ago and still remains a mystery to me and those around me. I was coming back from delivering a shipment and was heading to my city. It was past 11 at night. I was driving on a very quiet road with little traffic, and it was very dark. I was listening to music when suddenly a friend of mine, who is also a truck driver, called me on the radio. I answered and greeted him with pleasure, telling him I was surprised he had called. I thought he was on vacation since he had told me he was going to take a week off to take his kids to an amusement park in Mexico City during the summer holidays. He didn't explain why he was working, only that his truck had broken down on a dirt road area. He knew I was on that road and asked me to please come help him since he couldn't reach anyone else. Of course I agreed. "Send me the exact location so I can see how long it will take me to get there," I responded. He gave me the directions, surprisingly precise, which was better for me as I wouldn't get lost. I told him it was perfect and that I would arrive in about an hour. I wanted to chat more with him while on my way, asking why he hadn't gone on vacation and just to talk so he wouldn't feel alone there. But he hung up immediately. I didn't question anything, just drove there to help in any way I could. He hadn't detailed what had happened to his truck, so perhaps I would just pick him up, and then he could go the next day with a mechanic or something. But I was worried about him being there alone, given the dangerous situation. I reached the place where he told me to enter the wilderness on a dirt road. It really made me wonder what he was doing there, as there were no lights or signs of any town or life. It was just wilderness and darkness. Of course, I started to feel somewhat nervous. I was tense about the situation, but never thought of ghosts or anything paranormal. I was more afraid of the living, and you know what I'm talking about. I tried calling my friend on the radio, but he didn't respond. I wanted to know exactly where he was since I was deep in the location he had told me, and I couldn't see him. But he never answered. I arrived at a place where there was just barren land. The road had ended, meaning there was no more path forward, and that's when I knew something was wrong. I decided to call my friend on his phone, but he didn't answer. Then, I tried calling his wife, and she did answer. I told her worriedly what was happening, trying not to scare her, of course, but I wanted to know if my friend had communicated with her. Before I could finish speaking, she said, "Wait, Roberto, Manuel is here with us. Didn't he tell you we were taking the kids on vacation?" I felt as if a bucket of ice water had been dumped on me. My heart raced because clearly, whoever had called me had my friend Manuel's voice, or something that imitated his voice perfectly, and knew my name. Manuel's wife, sounding worried on the phone, then passed it to my friend. "What's up, brother? Are you okay?" Manuel said. I quickly summarized what had happened, and he told me, "Get out of there now. Leave that place. I didn't call you. My truck is at my house. Someone else wanted you to go there." Then the call dropped. I tried calling again, but it said there was no signal. As I turned around to leave, I saw many silhouettes emerging from the darkness with shapes I had never seen before. They were not human and were walking towards me. I started the truck as quickly as I could, turning around, and these things began to run towards me. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't see much behind me because it was too dark. Then the radio sounded again. I answered, thinking it was a colleague Manuel had called, but it was a macabre, unnaturally deep voice I had never heard before, telling me not to leave, that they wouldn't harm me. I hung up immediately and kept driving, getting closer to the road, but the radio kept sounding, and I could hear many creatures mocking me. And I say creatures because their voices were not human. I don't know what the hell they were, but I didn't stop and didn't look back. I kept driving until I finally reached the road and was safe. A few minutes later, when I got signal again, my phone rang. It was Manuel again, worried about me because he didn't know what was happening. I told him I was fine and on my way home, and he shouldn't worry. That night I arrived home with so much fear and tension. I told my wife and later my colleagues, who believed me instantly because they too have been victims of the unknown on the roads when darkness invades. I never found out what it was that perfectly imitated my friend's voice and why they wanted me there. And I don't even want to imagine what would have happened if I hadn't managed to escape in time, or if a tire had burst, or countless other things that could have happened. I firmly believe I wouldn't be here telling you this. Hello everyone. This story that I'm about to tell you happened to me years ago when I was a truck driver living in the United States. I worked on my trailer, traveling from state to state each week, which I really enjoyed as it allowed me to see places I had never been before, and many of them were truly beautiful. I traveled by day and night, not keeping to a fixed schedule. I would take on transport jobs whenever requested, regardless of the time, because it paid very well. Whenever I share this story, people always ask if I ever saw strange things on the road while driving. The answer is yes. It would be odd to say no, as I am someone who has always believed that we are surrounded by things we cannot see. Many of these things hide in the night, in remote, desolate places like the highways and their vast mountains. What I'm about to tell you, without a doubt, I consider the most incredible and disturbing thing that happened to me during those years. I remember taking a long trip from California to Pennsylvania. I would sleep in the cabin and then continue my journey. It was winter, so it was very cold. That night I was driving around 3:30 in the morning, looking for a gas station or one of those 24-hour diners to get myself some coffee and something to eat. I drove until I noticed some lights a few meters ahead. It was a small diner, which, luckily for me, was open. I pulled off the road and parked my truck outside in the lot, where, incidentally, there were no parked cars. But I didn't find it strange since it made sense that there wouldn't be any customers at that hour, or so I thought. I entered the place expecting it to be warm from the heating, but it was very cold inside. In fact, just as cold as outside. I decided to order my food to go since I couldn't enjoy eating there in such cold. I preferred to return to the warmth of my trailer. And the strangeness begins here. Upon entering the diner, aside from feeling cold, I saw a table occupied by two men who stared at me the entire time from the moment I stepped inside. Honestly, it made me somewhat uncomfortable because they wouldn't stop looking at me. I tried to ignore them and headed straight to the counter to order, but at the counter, I saw a woman about 60 years old with a somewhat disturbing appearance, who also watched me approach without taking her eyes off me, with a very serious face. Country music was playing in the place, and besides that woman, there was a cook in the back who also watched me through the window where the food is passed. I won't deny feeling uncomfortable as these people were acting very strange, and it wasn't usual for me to be stared at so incessantly. But at that point, I wasn't scared or thinking anything bad, just confused. I told the lady I would like to order. She, without saying anything and without taking her eyes off me, handed me a piece of paper and a pen to write down my order. I took it, thanked her, wrote down what I wanted and indicated that it was for takeout. I gave it back to her and then asked for the bathroom. She pointed with her hand where it was. I thanked her again and walked there, entering quickly as I was in a hurry. After finishing, I went to wash my hands and splash my face to wake up a bit. Then, I checked my old cell phone to see if there were any messages from my wife. After that, I opened the bathroom door to leave, but what I found upon opening the door was something I absolutely did not expect and left me stunned for a while. The place was dark, and through the outside lights I could see it was abandoned. The tables were broken, the walls were nearly falling apart, and the counter was gone. There was a pile of rubble and trash on the floor, which made it difficult to walk without tripping. I was trembling with fear, trying to get out of there, stumbling over the debris, and at the same time trying to comprehend what was happening. I was overwhelmed with fear, distress, and nervousness all at once. When I got out of the place, I saw a patrol car parking. I came out with my hands up, although they weren't pointing at me. The officer approached me and asked what I was doing there. I couldn't tell him what really happened. I knew he wouldn't believe me and would think instead that I had taken substances and could detain me. The first thing that came to mind to tell him was that I couldn't hold it any longer and had thought of entering there to relieve myself. He checked me and also my truck, then entered the place with his flashlight and told me to wait outside, which I did. He came out and told me he would let me go, but to never again enter abandoned places to use the bathroom and to wait until I found a gas station. I apologized and thanked him for the warning, but I couldn't help myself and had to ask what that place was before. He looked at me as if recalling something very bad and told me it used to be a very famous diner in the 90s, always full of people, mostly truck drivers from that road. But one day, when the place was full, 2 armed men entered and took the lives of 12 people there. After that, the diner closed, and no one ever wanted to reopen it because it was a place marked by tragedy, by the horror of the events. I was astounded listening to that. I left in my truck but was so scared and trembling that it wouldn't stop. I kept asking myself why this had happened to me, why that place was lit just when I was passing by, why they wanted me to come to the place. So many questions that obviously will never have an answer. Those people who wouldn't stop looking at me when I entered evidently were no longer in this plane, and it was the first time I saw deceased people, and it was not at all pleasant. Truly, it wasn't. I'm only left with this horrible experience to tell, but I would have preferred not to be the one who lived it. I work for a moving company in the United States and have been with them for years. My job involves transporting furniture and belongings of clients to their new homes in my truck. I make long trips, that is, from city to city, and sometimes even to other states. First of all, my name is Felipe, and the following story I want to share happened to me on one of these trips. I was transporting furniture and possessions for a family moving from Washington to Colorado. It was going to be a long trip, so I prepared all my things and hit the road. Night had fallen, and I was on a call with my mother, who was telling me about some problems that had occurred at home when suddenly I heard some knocks from the trailer's box. They were so loud that even my mother on the phone asked what that noise was. I told her I didn't know, that it came from the box, and perhaps something had fallen. I told her I had to hang up to park somewhere and check that everything was all right. I pulled over and went to check the back with a flashlight. I opened the doors and saw that everything was in order, but I still decided to climb in and check everything, as if something happens to any of the people's furniture, we have to pay for them as new. I walked to the back, but everything looked in perfect condition, just as my co-worker and I had organized it before I left. However, at the back, I noticed a cardboard box that was tipped over, and on the floor there were many scattered toys, which was very strange since all the boxes were completely sealed. We made sure of that. I understood that the box might have fallen, even though I was driving very well, but I couldn't explain how it had opened with so much packing tape on it. Anyway, I picked up all the toys and checked that they were intact, then put them back in the box, sealed it again with the same tape, and left it on the ground so it wouldn't fall over again. Then I closed up and continued driving. Minutes later, I called my mother again to let her know that everything was fine, as I knew she would have been worried, and then we continued talking about what she was telling me. But then knocks were heard again from the back, and this time it wasn't just that, but also the sound of someone humming. I let my mother know what was happening, and she said that wasn't normal, that I had to park at a gas station where there was enough light and check the box thoroughly. So I parked at the first gas station, hung up the phone, and went back into the box to check. I must tell you, as I walked outside the truck, That voice was still audible, but now I could hear it clearer and closer, and it seemed to be of a little girl. I rushed to open, and when I entered, that sound was no longer heard. I asked if anyone was there, but there was no answer. Again, I walked to the back of the box. Although there was light outside, it did not illuminate the back, so I took out my flashlight again. And again I could see that same cardboard box tipped over with all the toys outside. My skin crawled just from seeing that, for this time, there was no way the box could tip over on its own and open again. I started to put the toys back again, but while doing so, the box's doors slammed shut. I ran to open them, but I couldn't. They could only be opened from the outside. I started to panic, hitting the truck to see if someone heard me, although I had parked far away from where the store and gas pumps were because I didn't want to get in the way. I didn't understand what was happening. This had never occurred before, and I knew it wasn't someone outside. I never saw or heard anyone outside while I was checking the place. I was hitting in desperation for someone to open for me when I heard a girl's laughter from the back of the truck's box. I used the flashlight, but I didn't see anyone. I was sweating and running out of oxygen from hitting the door so much and terrified of whatever was in there with me. I felt a terror I wouldn't wish on anyone. I called my mother and told her what was happening. She called the police and told them where I was, so they sent a highway patrol officer who was nearby. I can't say exactly how long it took, but it felt like an eternity to me. All the time I was there, that girl wouldn't stop laughing, and the toys moved. I couldn't see them because I didn't want to turn on the light and see something that might cause me a heart attack or something, but I could hear them. Suddenly it would go silent, and then start humming the same song that I still can't get out of my head. Finally, the police arrived, opened the door for me, and asked if I was okay. I told them everything. He went into the gas station to investigate because he thought someone had done this to me on purpose and wanted to check the cameras to see who it had been. But the cameras showed that the doors had closed by themselves, which was impossible because there wasn't even wind that night. And even if there had been, those doors are very heavy. They don't close by themselves unless someone manipulates them. The officer was as surprised as I was. He told me to notify the company I work for because maybe the doors needed to be changed, and after that, we left. All the way, I could hear noises behind, but I no longer bothered to go see what it was. I was not planning to enter there again until I delivered all the furniture. Upon arrival at the address, I told the couple what had happened, as the toys were completely scattered throughout the truck, and I had to let them know. The lady put her hand to her mouth, her eyes filled with tears, and she ran into her house. At that moment, I didn't understand her reaction until her husband told me that their little daughter, Lily, had just died of a terminal illness a month ago. That's why they were moving, because that city reminded them of her. He also told me that those were her toys, that he had insisted to his wife that they donate them, but she didn't want to because she said it was the only thing she had left of her daughter. The man apologized to me, but at the same time asked me to tell him the details of what I had heard. It seemed to give him some happiness to know that his daughter was there. I told him about the song that was hummed, and he told me that song was composed by his wife when she spent nights with her in the hospital, and Lily couldn't sleep. For me, it was very hard to hear all that. I truly felt many emotions together. On one hand, the fear of knowing that a deceased girl had traveled with me and had locked herself in the box of the trailer with me, and on the other hand, sadness when hearing her story and seeing the sadness of her parents, because I am also a parent. On the way back, nothing happened. I don't know if the girl is still at her parents' house playing with her toys, or if they have decided to donate them. Wherever she is, I just hope she is well. And to that couple, I only wish them healing. Hello, community. This story is not mine. It was told to my uncle when he was a truck driver here in Mexico in the early 2000s. I asked him for permission to share it with all of you, and he agreed, only asking that I do not reveal his real name. So, We will call him Jose Luis for the story. I asked for his permission to tell it because it's quite disturbing and definitely worth sharing. He first told us about it when we were younger, and then recounted it when we were older. On both occasions, it was something that really made our skin crawl. He was heading to the state of Jalisco, which was his delivery point, accompanied by a colleague and friend who was helping him unload the merchandise. They were near a town in the early hours of the morning, though he does not remember the exact time. While driving and chatting, they saw a person running towards them in the middle of the road. My uncle wanted to brake because he would have run him over otherwise. It was a man wearing a blue robe with a logo, standing in the middle of the road trying to get my uncle to stop and help him, or so it seemed. My uncle, upon stopping, rolled down the window and yelled at him, asking if he was crazy and saying he could have hit him. How could he think of running in the middle of the road? The man slowly approached the window. My uncle said he had a vacant look and tearful eyes and kept begging, "Please help me, please help me, the beast is coming." My uncle's friend asked who was chasing him, but the man just kept shouting the same thing over and over, until my uncle saw the logo on his robe. It was from a psychiatric hospital nearby. My uncle discreetly informed his friend, making sure the man didn't hear, and his friend went to the cab to call the authorities to report that the man had escaped and was running in the middle of the road. Meanwhile, my uncle says he kept the man engaged, telling him everything would be okay, but he never let him get into the truck as the man wanted. He told him the police were on their way, that they were very close, and that they could leave because they had to make their delivery on time. They told the man the police would help him, but they could not do anything more for him, as they also couldn't take a stranger into the truck, especially someone who might be mentally unstable, as it could be dangerous for them. My uncle made sure the man stayed at the edge of the road where he wouldn't be in danger of being hit by a car, and after that, they left. They had gone a fair distance when my uncle's friend received a call from the police. They had found the man in the woods completely torn apart, with his arms and legs ripped off. They had to go back to give a statement because the police wanted to know if they had seen anything else. The authorities said that whatever did this to the man must have been a very large animal with huge claws. But the strange thing was that there were no wild animals in that area, only pigs, horses, and sheep on the nearby farms, nothing more. My uncle told them that the man had said a beast was chasing him, but my uncle thought he was hallucinating because he was a patient from the mental hospital. He added that they hadn't seen anything else. They were only watching him to ensure he didn't run into the road while a car was passing. My uncle said the police were very confused and also worried because the forensics team couldn't determine what had left the man in that condition. They knew it was an animal, and his limbs had been torn off with large bites. It was the most atrocious thing they had seen in their line of work, as the police affirmed. After that, they let my uncle and his friend go, and they never found out what happened with the case or what had done that to the poor man. But after all, he wasn't so crazy, as he could see what was following him, which unfortunately, my uncle didn't believe. Of course, my uncle felt guilty for a long time. But I also wonder, what would you have done in his place? You can't just pick up someone you don't know in the middle of the road in the middle of the night, especially knowing that person had escaped from a psychiatric hospital. I don't know. I know there will be many differing opinions, but here the important point and the real question of this story is, what was it that did that to that man? It's something we will never know, but it's truly haunting. Thank you for listening to these stories. I hope you enjoyed them. Much more content is on the way. Subscribe and activate the little bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. Have a great evening, everyone. See you next time.